All right, welcome back to the next video in this introduction to Triple Threat Basketball, a new tabletop basketball game that will be releasing soon. And this will show you how to read the player cards and how to use them within the context of a play. So first, the player card setup. You can see here that I have player cards that have images with the logos for each team on them. Some of these logos are harder to see than others, but you can see the logo in the corner here and here. It's down here for these two players. That is not how the game will come to you whenever you purchase the game. You'll have a couple of different options. And the first option will look like this. So you can see here that you have the bottom section for each card in a 4-cross setup here. If you wanted to go through and print these larger, I'm sure you could increase the size on them and cut them out as you need to. But basically, it's a square card that then you would use that and manipulate that for the gameplay. But as everything has their name and their defensive adjustment, it has all of their roles that you would need for every role. And then we also have the default tall card, which you can see here is the same size as the regular cards. So you can see everything lines up here. You have the players' sort of gameplay values and numbers that you roll against during the game. And then you also have the Triple Threat logo at the top as a default. Now, you'll also be able to download. It'll be a free download off of the website. The website is triplethreatbasketballgame.com, triplethreatbasketballgame.com. And on the website, you'll be able to download the NBA 75 player photos. And with that folder of photos, you'll have all of these players here. So here's a few more. You can see that this lines up with these players here. So with the player photos, you'll be able to add them in to, let me show you this one. So here is Tiny Archibald. And you'll be able to download the photo for Tiny Archibald and place it right here. It's sort of a placeholder. It has the logo here if you don't care to actually print the photographs, but you do like the tall cards. So that's an option. But if you do want the photo with the logo, you can take the photo and in any image editing program, sort of lift that image or import it into the image editing program and put it on top of the PDF file as you open the PDF file. This can be done in Adobe Acrobat. If you have a copy of that, it can be done in Photoshop or Illustrator very easily. So you just take that photo and you superimpose it on the tall card, and then when you print out the sheet with all the photos, you'll have them for whatever you need as far as the paper that you print them on. I have them just on regular paper here, but that's just for demonstration purposes. But the tall cards will come like this, and the square cards will come all as a grid as well. So that's how you'll receive the cards. If you want to do the photos, you can. One word on the photos is that I do not own a license to sell them. That's why they don't come with the game. These are my own personal creation. I don't have a license to resell the photos to you. So if you're going to use the photos, please don't resell the cards that you make. Only use those for your personal enjoyment. They bring some they make for a great looking card, but please don't sell any cards that you make with those photos on a secondary market. I do not own the copyrights to either the photos or the logos, and I've not paid for those rights. So if you are using those to resell, then we are all in violation of copyright laws, at least in the United States. So please don't please don't do that, because we want to stay on the right side of the law with that. So use them for your own personal use, though, because they're really, they make for a beautiful card. I set these out next to each other so that we can see the differences between the players. You obviously have your front court here, you have your back court here, and you have your front court here. Point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, and center. And then each of them has also a number here, and that number represents their defensive adjustment. So you have their name. It's going to have their team colors. I went to teamcolorcodes.com and actually got the right team color codes to put in there. And so those are all correct. And then we also have this bottom section here. Now you have your 1 to 10 roll, and then you have each of your play types. So these are shot types or play types based off of what happens on the offensive chart that's part of the game engine. So we have a pass, so you can use this column to determine if the player made the pass successfully, or was it a turnover or a steal, which everybody has sort of those options. Some people have more turnovers, like Harden has a higher turnover percentage than Michael Jordan or LeBron. You'll find that your front court players typically have a lower turnover percentage. They just handle the ball less, and your front court players typically have a higher percentage. So they are going to be passing the ball, and there's sort of the hazard of passing, having it stolen, or throwing the ball away. For a drive is like a dribble drive, so you're driving to the basket with the ball on offense. A layup is more, you would use this column for offensive rebounding and also for fast breaks. So you're on a fast break, you're going to the rim, you're going to be using, especially if you're the second player going to the rim, then you're going to be using the layup column. We have a jumper column for a big man. That's going to be a short jumper, which they have their short jumpers here. For a backcourt player, that's going to be like a mid-range jumper, anything from 5 feet to the 3-point line, that kind of thing. So it's going to be a sort of your mid-range jump shot. We also have a 3-pointer for the players in the backcourt, even for older players. So even for older players like Tiny Archibald, I gave him a 3-point percentage, even though he didn't have a 3-point percentage. And you can see there's a post up here. Dr. J has a 3-point percentage, and Bill Russell has a post up number. And so you would use either the 3-pointer or the post up. It's clearly labeled on the game engine chart. For power forwards and centers, they're typically going to have a post number. For backcourt players, they're typically going to have a 3-point percentage. Although for a player like Dirk Nowitzki, who shot a lot of threes, but he was a power forward, I gave him a 3-point number because it was so significant, the number of threes that he takes in his career. So that you have some sort of crossover players like that, especially in the modern era. If you play more of the older players, pre-1980, you're going to have sort of the traditional center power forward with a post-up. The backcourt is going to have a 3-point percentage. Typically, it's not going to be very much. I think that some players like Pete Maravich, could have played really well in the modern game of basketball. Other players would have struggled, so I give them at least a 10 or 20% chance of making a three. I don't think that they couldn't transition to shooting threes. It just wasn't a part of their game, but it is a part of the game engine, so I did want to include them into that as well. So you'll see it's color coded here, so that the green means something good. Usually that means it's a make. For LeBron, anything from a 6 to a 10 on a dribble drive to the basket is going to be a good shot. It's going to be a make. So he's either going to dunk it, he's going to lay it up, he's going to stop and pull up for a short jumper, or he takes it all the way to the rim, he lays it in, and he gets fouled. So you have some options here, and on the layup it would be that would be mostly in transition, like in a fast break. You also have a yellow, and the yellow is going to designate a foul. So it could be either a foul, which is a non-shooting foul without the asterisk, or with the asterisk is a shooting foul. So for a couple of opportunities here, he drives to the basket, he's fouled. He doesn't make the shot, but he's fouled on the shot, so he's going to get 2 free throws. So that's how that works. If you're not in the bonus and you get fouled on a non-shooting foul, then you would simply take the ball out of bounds, run the set offense, and then just kind of restart the offensive play. If you're in the bonus, obviously a non-shooting foul is going to lead to a 1-on-1. You make the first, you get a second, you miss the first, and then you go to the rebounding and see how that plays out. We also have a free throw number here, and the free throw represents their free throw percentage. So when they do go to the line, you're going to roll 1d10 against this percentage, 1 to 10, and it's going to be good or not good. So that's just how the free throws work. And then finally, the defensive number here, you can see everybody's is a little bit different. Typically, your front court players are going to have a higher defense percentage or defense adjustment, and higher is lower in this game. Because what you'll do is, let's say LeBron James is being tightly guarded by Karl Malone, and he is taking a jump shot, and his roll for the jump shot is a 7. Normally that would be good, but because he's tightly guarded by this player, we're going to adjust his 7 down to a 5. So you go from a 7 to a 5, and then you come over to the jumper, and then he misses because of the defense of Karl Malone. So that's how defensive adjustments work. They seem very small at first, but it really is. It does make some difference in the game. If LeBron was being guarded by James Harden, the jumper is good. So it really does depend on who's guarding you as to what happens on the play. Obviously, if LeBron had a 10 and he was guarded by Malone, that becomes an 8, and there's no effect on the play, because even when these superstar players are tightly guarded, they will make shots with guys in their face. So sort of the thinking and the rationale working through these cards. But defense does come into play, and there is a role within the offensive role where you find out, is it normal defense or basically open, or is it a tight defense with a man right up in his face or up on his body. And then on the tight defense, you would adjust with the player that's guarding the offensive player. I think that's good through here. This is the player card that actually is sort of the action card in the game. And when it comes down to taking a shot, making a pass, shooting a free throw, that's all going to come off the cards. And this really is the individualized part of the game. And you'll have, again, 76 players. There was a tie when they did the voting. So there are 76 players on the NBA 75th anniversary team. And 75 of the all-time best players as voted by coaches, GMs, front office people, and players. There were players on the voting committee as well. So it's a smattering of players from the 1940s all the way to today. Most of them are Hall of Famers. Most of them are names that you have definitely known or grown to love over the years. And you get a chance to sort of mix and match eras, mix and match conferences, mix and match styles of play, putting different teams together. I think it'll be a lot of players. It's a lot of fun. If you only ran 5-on-5, you could have as many as 12 teams. No, 13 teams. You could have 13 teams. Is that right? No, more than that. 14 would be 70, and then you would have a few free agents left over. So you could have 14 teams in a league that you could play against one another if you were playing the 5-on-5, and maybe just ignore counting, fouling out and stuff like that. Count the fouls, but don't count them against the players. So if you wanted to run 7-on-7, you obviously could run a 10-team league, 7-on-7, and you have a few free agents left over as well. So there's a lot of players that you can play with, and you can actually build some pretty nice little either playoffs, fake playoffs, or all-star games, or I'm sure you could take many of these. They played in similar eras, and you can put together actual all-star teams to play against one another. So very fun group of players. They all are amazing at what they do. And one of the things I did want to point out is just by looking at the players, looking at their colors here, you can get a sense of what type of player it is. And maybe I can zoom in a little bit. So you can really get a sense of what type of player you're looking at. So this is LeBron and Karl Malone. So you can get a sense of, does he get to the foul line a lot? Most of these players here are going to get to the foul line a lot. Shaq, look at his post number. Anything 4 to 10 is going to be just an auto bucket. It's good. He's got a couple of fouls in here because people are just hacking him as he goes to the line. So basically, if Shaq gets you in the post, good things are going to happen, which if you watched him play, that's sort of how it was when Shaquille O'Neal was on the floor. Good jumper here from Karl Malone, but also good at the post up. Excellent free throw shooter here. 90% free throw shooter is James Harden. Obviously, Jordan is getting fouled all the time, and he's going to the line. He's also an 80% free throw shooter for his career. That's the other part about these. I've basically taken their career stats and translated them here onto their cards, but I also went through and made sure that I wasn't discounting the end of their careers. So the end of MJ's career doesn't discount his numbers. This is Michael Jordan as you remember him. Maybe not completely Michael Jordan as his stats say, but they are the Jordan in his peak years. So that's what I tried to do for most of these players. Some of them, it didn't matter. The end of their career was just as great as the beginning. Some of them had slow starts, some of them had slow ends, and some of them only had like a handful of like really solid years in the middle, and try to represent the player that you remember. These are all-time greats, so they have to perform as all-time greats, and the numbers come out very realistic as far as their shooting percentages are concerned. Obviously, you're rolling dice on a 1 to 10 scale, so anything can really happen. But over time, as you play the players over and over, you're going to feel like, okay, this is MJ taking over at this point of the game, or this is James Harden just canning threes after three after three, or Magic, dishing out assists and things like that. So each of those numbers, blocks, rebounds, assists, etc., are not individually they're not individually set out for each player, so everybody kind of has a similar opportunity for those things. But I've also weighted the charts that have those rebounds and blocks and steals and things like that. I've weighted them toward the appropriate positions. So your power forwards, your centers, your small forwards are all going to get more rebounds than your point guard, just by way of the way that the charts are created. There's just more opportunities for them, so that type of thing. But as far as when you're shooting, it's individualized to each player, or when you're passing for an opportunity to turn the ball over or not. So that is the player cards in Triple Threat basketball. Again, the NBA 75 set will be the beginning. If this goes well and is well received by the community and sales do well, that would encourage me to continue creating more sets. I'd love to do the WNBA. I'd love to do the ABA and just have sort of ABA all-stars, an all-star team. I'd love to do a top 50 college men's basketball set, which would probably be the second set that I do. And just have college players. Are obviously, some of these guys are going to be in that set, but there are lots of college players that you've never heard of, or there were amazing college players that just didn't do well in the NBA. So maybe just having some of those players in the set as well would be really cool. And then you could kind of begin to mix and match some of those sets together and play college against the pros, or play their college selves against their pro selves, that kind of thing. But the game engine chart is flexible enough to be able to use that, and the stats are generic enough to be able to do that. One quick word on the defensive stat. The stat that I used is something that's been calculated across time, sort of like some of the advanced stats in baseball. The stat I use is called D rating, and it stands for defensive rating. There's also an O rating for offense, but didn't use that. I used actual offensive numbers from the player. But there's looked at the all-time list of D rating players. If you were in the top 100, you got a -2. If you were from 100 to 200 or 100 to 300, I don't remember what the list I saw was. But if you're in the next group down, then you got a -1 rating. So that's going to be Jordan and LeBron. Good defensive players. Some of these guys were, you're talking about elite all-time defensive player of the year kind of players. So if you ever received a defensive player of the year, but you weren't on that list, you got a -2. If you were a 6-time all NBA defensive player, you got a -2. So I also tried to look at, especially for the older guys, was that their reputation? Bill Russell is an all-time defensive player, right? So he's going to get a -2 regardless whether I saw him on any sort of list. So I tried to make some sense out of who these players really were. Sometimes I needed to go back and just watch some YouTube footage, especially when deciding what types of moves and things to put on them as a post player. So a guy like Hakeem, which I don't have Olajuwon here, but if you look at Kareem, he's got a couple of different hooks here. Obviously, one is, those are going to be sky hooks for him, which we have here. And maybe one dunk here for Russell, but most of the time he's going to be shooting a little baby hook shot in the lane or a face-up jumper, or he's going to be laying the ball in. He does not a huge dunker, but with Shaq, obviously, anytime he got to the rim, he was looking to punish the rim and to dunk the ball. So he actually gets, quite a few dunks on the post move. And there are other guys like Kevin Garnett, or some of the more modern players, Anthony Davis or Giannis. Those guys have more dunks because they're just doing more dunking. And that's actually a stat that's being kept. What percentage of your shots are dunks? And so for the more modern players, I can actually get a lot more accurate results. With the older players, it's a little bit harder, and you just kind of like watch them and see the highlights. What kind of player are they? Are they more of a jump shooter? Are they more of guys driving to the lane? Are they someone who goes in, they try to dunk it as much as possible? So really just trying to get a feel of who these players are. Many of them were playing or finished by the time I was born. So some of them, even the ones that I remember as a kid, I didn't watch all the time. I really, from the 90s on, is when I was really paying attention to basketball on TV. So those are the players that I remember and know a little bit more. And then obviously the modern players I've been watching. So, but the older players are a little bit more difficult to get a handle on exactly what kind of player that they were. We have limited footage for some of them. And you just got to kind of look through the numbers to see what type of player this is, and then what era are they in, what style of basketball were they playing, that kind of thing. But hopefully each of these players is represented well. Hopefully you look at that, and when you play with them, you think, okay, I'm really playing with Patrick Ewing. Okay, I'm really playing with Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant. That how they're represented on the cards is how they are. So that's maybe more a TLDR about the player cards, but I just wanted to sort of lay out my thinking about the player cards, as well as how you use them within the game. The next video up is going to talk about the game engine chart, and that's sort of the next step in each role.